There are a lot of animals on Earth, and sometimes the survival of one is based on the demise of another. But when it comes to our pets, that's not what we want to hear. This python twisted a mama dog. Seconds later, the unimaginable happened. The mother dog was completely focused on keeping her puppies safe from the massive snake in front of them. Keeping all three of them safe was almost impossible. The puppies ran all over, and she jumped in front of them as far as she could. She was completely focused on her pups when the python lunged. It grabbed her and started to twist around the mama dog. While her humans were inside the house, the python started to squeeze and hold on. Her time was running out. She couldn't bark, she could barely breathe. Did the dog understand how close she was to death? If she didn't make it, she would leave a huge hole in her family. She was loved like any other member of the family. When Anna and Peter took over the family farm, they found that their old family dog wouldn't be enough to guard their new, huge property in South Africa. That's why they decided to get another German Shepherd. The new pup was named Brutus. He grew strong, surrounded by the love that Anna and Peter poured into his training, and developed a firm bond with his family, especially with Peter. Brutus followed him everywhere. He was sweet, but his behavior made Anna nervous. The older dog passed away soon after the puppy's arrival, which meant that she was left all alone when Brutus and Peter were out on the farm. It could be scary, since Anna didn't grow up on the farm. There was nothing like a night in the African bush, no street lamps anywhere in sight of their home. The darkness could be thick, not to mention the ominous presence of certain animals like the jackals with their unsettling cries at night. It could be something magical to experience, but it might be scary if you're out there on your own. Sometimes Peter stayed overnight, and it freaked Anna out. Knowing this, Peter came up with an idea. He returned home and asked Anna to grab a few things from the pickup truck. It was a strange request, but she didn't even think about it and went out. In the passenger seat, she saw a little female German Shepherd waiting for her. The puppy wiggled and licked her face as soon as Anna picked her up. Anna was charmed, and so was Brutus. They called the pup Coco, and the two dogs instantly became best friends. But one day, everything changed in the most tragic way imaginable. By the time Coco was 3 years old, they had fallen into a nice rhythm. Brutus still went out with Peter, but Coco stayed glued to Anna. One day, Peter came back from the field and asked where Brutus was. Anna hadn't seen the dog all day. She thought he had left with Peter. That was when panic set in. They both knew something was wrong right away. All day, Coco had been nervous and on edge. Anna had closed her in the house because she kept barking and trying to run off. Anna and Peter were worried. They had to figure out how long it had been since they'd seen the dog. It was shocking to realize the last time was early in the morning when he first went out. He always went out before Coco, who liked to snooze later. Not going with him might have been a fatal mistake. They couldn't believe they hadn't noticed the dog was missing. Minutes later, it was going to get so much worse. When they took Coco out on a leash, they hoped she would lead them to Brutus, but they didn't want her getting away if there was any danger around. They had to be careful. The dog barked as she started to rush toward the bush. She rushed, and the couple followed along the dirt path just beyond the house. There, they saw something that made them feel sick. The snake that had slithered through there must have been massive, but that wasn't the thing that got their attention. It was what was next to the snake track that was horrifying. Tufts of dog hair lay next to the snake track. Black and brown pieces of fur were scattered all over, and in it there was some blood. Something terrible had happened there. Then Coco cried softly. Anna and Peter knew that the dog had realized it too. They weren't going to find Brutus. It was dark, and they wouldn't be able to do anything more that night. Heartbroken, they all headed back home. Peter was furious. He couldn't sleep, and at first light, he went out to search for the snake. There was nothing to do for Brutus, but they did not want a massive snake so close to the house. They also had a chicken coop in their yard, and they thought it would be too vulnerable if the situation slipped once again out of control. Peter searched everywhere without any results. After having such a terrible and large meal the previous day, they expected to spot the snake quickly, but they couldn't find it. They saw the tracks, but then they went into the thick grass and the trail disappeared, as if it had been picked up and moved. The snake was gone. They kept searching for it for days, but it had vanished. It stayed missing for months. Wherever it was hiding, it wasn't gone completely. Winter arrived, and the snake probably found a cozy place to sleep through the colder months. Back at home, Anna and Peter were sad and felt guilty. Even Coco seemed to be out of sorts. She was a lot sleepier than usual, napping far more than normal. She was even picking up weight, which they assumed was because she wasn't as active as she usually was. Or so they thought, until Anna realized something amazing. Coco was pregnant. She was going to have Brutus's puppies. It would be like having a small part of him back. They just had to make sure the puppies stayed safe and that Coco remained healthy. They made sure she stayed close to the house for months, but nothing scary happened. They also kept a close eye on Coco. It would be devastating to lose her or any of the puppies. It was all planned out. They would take her to the vet a day or two before delivery, and then the vet could take care of her through birth. But puppies, just like babies, don't wait for other people's timelines. One night, when the couple came home from dinner, Coco was napping in her bed, but she wasn't alone. Two tiny puppies lay next to her. Anna and Peter were shocked. Then Coco stood up again and started to pace. They grabbed the puppies to make sure she didn't trample them, and soon her third puppy was born. She licked him, but he didn't move. Peter picked him up and gently rubbed him on his chest, blowing on the tiny puppy's nose. Suddenly, the puppy was breathing. Peter placed him back next to Coco, and she settled down and fed her 3 puppies. It was adorable. The little boy they almost lost looked so much like Brutus as a puppy, it was bittersweet. For a few months, the family and their pets lived without much drama. The puppies were a joy, and having them around helped the family heal from the loss of Brutus. Sadly, that feeling wasn't going to last long. Danger was still a lot closer than they could imagine. By the time spring arrived, the puppies were bigger and could play outside. Coco was a great mom and made sure the puppies didn't stray too far. They kept them in a playpen most of the time, but now they could run free. They should have been safe, but living in the African bush, even close to home, could be dangerous. Peter had fenced the house, making sure the dogs couldn't run into the bush on their own, but that wasn't going to help on this particular day. Coco was focused on keeping the puppies together while they played in the yard, but then a sound or smell alerted her to something strange. Before she knew it, the puppies were almost on top of a massive python. She jumped in front of them, trying to protect them, but the puppies were still so young and curious that they didn't realize they were in great danger. They tried to get closer to inspect the snake. Each time one of them got closer, Coco jumped in front of them and tried to keep them away from the snake. Keeping track of all 3 and keeping them from danger was not easy. She was focused on them and didn't see the snake starting to move. Then the snake lunged. If Coco had been watching herself, she might have been able to dodge it. Then again, this was likely the same snake that took Brutus, so who knows what could happen? Before she knew it, the snake was wrapped around her, twisting tightly. Anna was in the house and heard Coco bark. She was just on her way to check when the dog stopped. She thought that meant everything was fine. What she didn't know was that the dog stopped barking because the air was being squeezed out of her. Peter was out in his workshop and didn't see it. If either of them had checked the live cameras, they might have known the danger their dog was in, but they didn't. Coco was at the mercy of the snake. She couldn't bark, and she could barely take a breath. Was this going to be the end? Was the snake going to make the 3 puppies orphans? The python twisted the mama dog, and seconds later, the unimaginable happened. Just as it seemed like all hope was lost, The three puppies began to bark furiously. They even tried to bite the snake, but they didn't make much of an impression. All they achieved was to make the snake angry, causing it to bite down on poor Coco, making sure it could hold on to its prey. It pulled tighter and held on to her. The puppies couldn't help much, but their furious barking got Anna's attention in the house. They had never sounded so angry. Not hearing Coco now suddenly scared her. Anna couldn't believe what she was seeing right there in front of her. She screamed for Peter to come as quickly as he could and to bring vinegar with him. She was nauseous looking at the sight in front of her. Her beloved dog Coco was being crushed by one of the biggest pythons Anna had ever seen. The three puppies next to her were watching their mama being crushed. Anna grabbed them and put them in a nearby puppy crate. The last thing she needed was for them to get hurt. She screamed for Peter again, and he finally came running. Anna's desperate screams told him all he needed to know. She was terrified. As soon as he saw the massive python around their dog, he knew why. He also knew that this snake was likely responsible for the loss of their beloved Brutus. They were determined not to lose another dog to this python. They took the vinegar and poured some over the snake's mouth. They knew it might hurt Coco and burn the wound caused by the snake, but survival was more important at that moment. Tasting the vinegar, the snake stopped biting down and loosened its grip on her body while trying to get away from the taste. This gave Peter and Anna the chance to get their hands between the snake and the German Shepherd. They started at its tail and began to unwrap it. The tail is the weakest part of a python and the best place to start. They had to gently unwrap it to get it away from Coco. While they unwrapped it, they also held onto its head, keeping it away from Coco so it couldn't bite down again. Soon she was free. They didn't know how much damage had already been done and how much of her body was crushed inside, but as soon as they freed her from the snake, she started to breathe deeply and whimper. She was still alive after all. While Peter still held the snake, Anna ran and got a big bucket. It would have been easy to take revenge on this creature now. It had already cost them one dog, and they had no idea if Coco would make it. These were people who had lived close to nature. They knew that the python was just a wild animal trying to survive. They wouldn't kill it for revenge. Still, they didn't want it anywhere close to the house. Finding easy prey, it could keep returning. They put holes in the lid of the bucket and later took the python to a snake shelter where it would be cared for and live in a massive enclosure. It wouldn't be a danger to their pets or livestock ever again. But first, they had to get Coco to the vet. They put the puppies safely inside and then rushed the mama to the clinic. She was awake and alert, but in pain. The snake could have broken her bones or crushed her organs, and they needed to make sure that the bite didn't get infected. A python isn't venomous, but the bite could still get infected. The vet gave her a scan, and she had a few broken ribs, but she was incredibly lucky. If her puppies hadn't tried to protect her and alert the humans, things could have been very different. They had to make sure the puppies didn't climb on their mama for a few days and kept her wound clean. Before they knew it, Coco was doing a lot better. She was safe, and the puppies were too. Peter and Anna decided to keep all three of them. They had plenty of space for all four dogs to enjoy. The male pup they saved at birth grew up to live up to his dad's legacy and built just as strong of a bond with Peter as Brutus once had. The family stayed together. As for the snake, it was released into a massive natural enclosure where it could feel free without being able to return to the farm. It wouldn't put itself in danger by going to other farms either. It was best for everyone,